Very good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ben Espinosa. My pronouns are him. I'm a grants manager here at the Department of Cultural Affairs. I'm joined by my fabulous colleagues, Brenda Slaughter-Reynolds and Rafael Vaca, also from the Grants Division. We are here to talk about the Department of Cultural Affairs Cultural Grant Program. To start, I'd like to pass the mic on to Brenda to walk us through a land acknowledgement. Brenda?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'd like to start off this meeting with a land acknowledgement. The City of Los Angeles Department of Cultural Affairs recognizes and acknowledges the Yavatin, the first people of this ancestral and unceded territory from the Tonga village of Yagna. The Greater Tongva region, which contains much of the current city of LA and contained hundreds of independent Tongva villages, was called Tongvanar, the first people of this land. We pay our deepest respects to their elders, past, present, and future. Please take a minute to consider the land and water we live upon, and the many legacies of once vibrant communities stripped of their freedoms and cultural traditions. Today, they call themselves the Gabrielino Tongva, Fernandinho Tatavim, and the Venturino Chumash. We recognize that the Yatavim are still here, and we are committed to lifting up their stories, culture, and lifeways, and honoring their land, ocean, and sacred spaces. Thank you.
Thank you, Brenda. Appreciate that. I'd like to offer now a preview of what we can expect over the next 90 minutes. We'll start off the conversation with a brief overview of the basics of the Cultural Grant Program. I'll walk us through some basic eligibility requirements, types of allowable projects, funding requests, funding priorities, and the project timeline. At that point, I'll switch gears a bit, ask Brenda to walk us through a deep dive of the online application process, so you'll have a nice sense and overview of all the various components we'll be asking of you as you prepare and submit a proposal to our grant program. So, although you are muted, and we can therefore not hear you, we do invite questions throughout this process. So in the bottom right portion of your screen, you should see a little chat icon, or it's kind of like a text box, text message icon. Feel free to type in questions throughout today's presentation. Rafael will be monitoring that stream throughout, and at opportune times during the presentation, we'll pause and we'll address any questions that haven't been answered. For folks who are dialed in today, you can't type, obviously, via phone. So at the very, very end of the presentation, we'll have an opportunity for you to unmute yourselves and speak your questions for us. Okay? So first, a little bit about the Department of Cultural Affairs. DCA exists to promote arts and culture as a way to ignite powerful dialogue, to engage LA's residents and visitors, and ensure LA's varied cultures are recognized, acknowledged, and experienced. Our mission at DCA is to strengthen the quality of life in Los Angeles by stimulating and supporting arts and cultural activities and ensuring public access to the arts for all of our residents and visitors alike. And of course, one of the main ways we go about achieving this mission is through our grant making, in particular our Cultural Grant Program, which we're here to talk about today. The Cultural Grant Program is funded through a hotel bed tax collected across the city, hotels, motels, and even Airbnbs. Based on recent budget allocations in recent years, we've been able to award just about $3.5 million every year, supporting over 300 organizations, arts and cultural organizations across the city, in the delivery of low-cost, high-quality arts and cultural services for all of our residents and visitors. So let's start off the conversation around some basic eligibility requirements. This grant program is intended to support 501c3 nonprofit organizations, specifically nonprofits with mission statements that focus on the delivery of arts and cultural services to the public. So you might be a nonprofit, for example, without an arts focus. Let's say you're a social service agency, a health agency, Chamber of Commerce, maybe even a business improvement district. You may be eligible to apply as an exception if you're proposing a project that's focused on the festivals or parade proposal. Our expectation is that you'd be the lead producer of such an event, but you'll involve the collaboration and partnership with a variety of arts organizations, artists, and other arts experts. The other takeaway with this initial requirement is that this grant program is not set up to support fiscally sponsored organizations. You must be a standalone 501 nonprofit organization to apply. Second requirement is that your organization be headquartered in the County of Los Angeles. As I mentioned, these are locally sourced funds meant to support organizations who are based here in our region. In addition to being based in Los Angeles County, your organization should also have at least 1 year of experience providing services within the municipal boundaries of the city of Los Angeles. The third eligibility requirement is an important one. We want you to approach us with an existing project and a case for how a city investment can make that existing project bigger, stronger, and faster. In other words, this is not a grant program for brand new ideas, new concepts, seed funding for new initiatives. We want you to come to us with a project that you've had experience delivering at least once and are able to make a case for how you can make it even better with some additional investment from the city of LA. And that leads to this fourth requirement that you should be able to provide to us some existing metrics on the project and the audience since you recently served. You'll have wonderful metrics around the number of jobs you help create and sustain, members of the public that you engage with in your public presentations, and importantly, you'll have fabulous photos and or video recording and documentation that you will use to dazzle our peer panelists about the wonderful project that we're proposing. There are also some project category-specific qualifications we'll go over in a few minutes, some expectations and eligibility requirements based on the type of project you are proposing. So let's talk about those types of projects. The first one are our artistic projects. The vast majority of our projects supported through the Cultural Grant Program fall under this category. An artistic project is one where your team of professional artists, designers, curators, arts administrators, teaching artists, technical and production staff are doing what they do best. They're engaged in roles where they're tapping into their expertise and experience to develop, design, conceive, and then ultimately deliver public arts experiences and opportunities. So these are your museum exhibitions, these are your film screenings, these are your dance concerts, music concerts, theatrical presentations, all the associated public programs and talkbacks that are tagged along with that. This also includes skill building workshops for the public, those types of events. And so as you're developing your artistic project for us, make sure that you emphasize the public presentation elements of this. For things like a film screening, museum exhibition, it's very easy. It's the ticket that it's the ticket you're paying to go and see the show. More tricky is with these projects that emphasize skill building, community-based efforts where there might be an art making opportunity for the public. That's fabulous, and definitely sell the case for how your roster of teaching artists are experienced and prepared to deliver an awesome experience there. But also, as you're packaging your project for us, is to emphasize the public presentation, the showcase, the culminating presentation where the general public is invited to participate. The second popular category for us in this Cultural Grant Program is our festivals and parades category. And there's some tweaks to this one this coming year. A festival or parade is a 3+ hour long outdoor or new this year virtual event that has served at least 1,000 people. This is an event that takes place in one day or maybe even a weekend. If it's an outdoor event, it should take place in a publicly operated space like a sidewalk, street, an intersection, public park, public corridor, public plaza. Privately operated spaces are not allowable. Parking lots, for example, would not be a good fit for this in the festivals category. These are projects that are typically annual, maybe are seasonal. It emphasizes super community relevant thematic focuses. It emphasizes community cohesion and kind of a neighborhood pride. These are projects, in contrast to other projects, that really emphasize the outside community partnerships element. In addition to employing many artists, the strongest festivals and parades project will definitely have an angle of activating other elements of the community. I think the local businesses, other non-arts organizations, those types of other stakeholders. Something also that we expect to see in festivals and parade projects is some level of rotating talent that we see from year to year. A festival or parade that showcases the very exact same bands, musicians, acts, artists every single year is not something we'd like to see in this category. We expect some rotating talent to keep your event fresh and new. So we have an expectation that at least 30% of your roster of participating artists will shift or be different from year to year. So one of the big tweaks we're making to this category this year is we're taking it apart and entertaining 3 types of festival and parade projects. So it's based on primarily attendance, small and large, or whether you're going on the online virtual space. So small outdoor public space festivals and parades for us are where the last time that event took place, you were able to garner at least 1,000 folks or up to 2,000 in attendance. Large public space festival and parades have garnered more than 2,000 attendees in the most recent cycle of that event. Online virtual festivals should have garnered at least 4,000 viewers in the last time it was offered to the public. Importantly for us is that you're able to tell us that at least half of that online viewership was based in the city of LA. So we want to understand that it's wonderful that the online virtual space has expanded our audience reach beyond our municipal, state, even country bounds. But as a local municipal funder, it is important for us that you're able to tell us a story of how your programming is able to affect and serve the residents here in our region. So based on what type of project festival project parade you're submitting, that can affect how much you can ask as a maximum allowable request, which we'll go over in a little bit. But I have 2 additional project categories I'd like to talk about. The first one, and this first and second one, they reflect a couple of name changes that we're instituting starting in this cycle. What was previously known as our arts education category, we are now renaming into this. We're calling it the Sequential Arts and School Learning, culminating in after-school public events category, SailCAPE for short. It's a lengthy mouthful of a category, but built into its name is a very clear expectation of what we expect to be submitted in this category. So Sequential Arts and School Learning, culminating after-school public events projects. These are the arts education multi-week residencies that take place at school that culminate in a show or presentation that is open to the general public. These are multi-week, grade-appropriate, California art standards aligned, curriculum-driven programs. So we expect to see a level of artistic arts education and rigor built into these projects. And to that point, SailCAPE applicants are required to submit a complete curriculum as part of your application requirements. That after-school public events part is also very important for us. The in-school learning that takes place in these types of projects is certainly valuable, but we don't consider them public events because it's not something that's open to the general public. So SailCAPE projects need to emphasize the culminating presentations that take place after school in the evening or even the weekends that can be marketed to the entire community, not just the friends and family of the students. Obviously something that we want them to attend. But we want these projects to really emphasize the opportunity to engage with community. So sequential, rigorous, grade-appropriate, standards-aligned programs. One of the reasons we created this name change is we wanted to create the distinction between projects that certainly work with schools, but didn't reflect that level of sequential, rigorous arts learning that would otherwise be presented with what we're calling SailCAPE projects. A couple of traditional examples. Like pop-in educational interactive concerts or assemblies where you work with schools. You have a group of musicians or other artists coming in to do a demonstration, interactive masterclass, that kind of thing. Those are terrific, but we want those submitted under our artistic project category. In other words, if you don't have a rigorous curriculum associated with your project, you probably belong in the artistic project category, right? The second other category we renamed, this is formerly our business education arts advocacy category. We're now calling field advocacy and sector learning, just to evoke the broader range of activities we can support here. So these are your, rather than asking your artists to engage in activities that results in a public presentation, these are projects that gather artists, gather arts administrators to engage in peer-to-peer learning and field advocacy. So these are your arts conferences. These are your discipline focused conferences and gatherings, and other general field advocacy, nonprofit sector learning work around the arts. So that's the distinction there. After having spoken about these different proposal categories, let's talk now about our application cycle. So here at DCA, we've devised this grant program to include an application cycle system that, in the ideal scenario, you as the applicant would only be submitting an application to us every other year. We don't want you applying to us every year if we can avoid it. And the way we can make that happen is that we've developed these odd versus even numbered calendar year cycles. And they relate to when we convene the peer panel experts who are going to evaluate your grant proposals. So this is the year 2021. Our proposals are due August 27th. It's an odd numbered calendar year. This is the year where we're going to convene we're going to convene our panel experts who have expertise outside of the performing arts. So these are our museum professionals, our curators, our other design visual arts administrators, literary artists, literary series curators, media arts, film festival professionals, traditional folk artists, and other arts educators who are focused on the non-performing arts. We're convening these panelists, and therefore we are especially interested in proposals along those categories. If your proposed project is within these categories, you are then submitting what we call an on-cycle grant proposal, in which case your proposal will be reviewed by the peer panelists most suited to evaluate. That allows you to reapply only in every other odd number calendar year. Now, let's say you're a performing arts organization who plans to submit a proposal this year. You might be a dance educator, a dance organization who's proposing a dance residency under our SailCape category. Totally eligible, totally fine. The challenge for us, however, on the administrative side is rather than convening a whole panel of dance education experts, we're going to be convening what we call a mixed arts panel to review a whole range of performing arts proposals this year. And that will allow you to only get funding consideration for the coming year. If you're submitting what we call an off-cycle grant proposal, we will then ask you to apply again next year so you can be on cycle. So our goal here is to get your proposal to be evaluated by the panelists who have the expertise to review it, and to get you on a cycle where you're only applying every other year. So let's just go through some examples of the type of projects we can expect to see this year. This is a year where we are inviting our FASL projects. These are our arts advocacy conferences. These are our peer-to-peer learning workshop series. This is the year when all our museums and galleries are going to be submitting proposals for their new exhibitions and the associated education and family programs. We'll see our literary arts organizations apply this year as well, promoting their literary events, distinguished author poet series for public readings and publications and associated programs for those. This is the year for our film festivals, our media arts organizations, public radio, public television, and other media presentations over the airwaves. This is when you're submitting your proposals in the artistic project category. Our traditional folk arts museums and other other organizations focused on the traditional folk arts, cultural heritage programs, and associated programs there. And of course, our SailCape and festivals who emphasize a non-performing arts discipline. So these are our painting, our in-school art painting, other design, sculpture residencies. These are our cultural heritage festivals and things like that. We'll entertain off-cycle proposals from our performing arts organizations as well. These are our dance concerts, music concerts, theatrical presentations, associated programs with those. Our multidisciplinary arts organizations, variety art series. And of course, arts SailCape and festival parades projects that emphasize the performing arts. So these are your dance residencies, music residencies in schools, and these are your dance festivals that take place outside, that kind of thing. So those are our proposal submission cycles. I'll pause here for questions. Raphael, is there anything that we should address at the moment?
I see no questions in the chat yet.
Okay, great. Let's keep on going then. So with all of that in mind, I'd love to highlight some cultural grant program priorities here. And so this will take the notes here to help you arrive at the most strategically packaged project for DCA funding consideration. So as a funder, we like to emphasize projects that will result in free or low-cost arts opportunities for the public. For us, we define the low cost as the price of what one might pay for a commercial movie ticket. So if you're planning a museum exhibition, general admission is in the $20 or less range, you're in the ballpark for us. Free is even better. The other thing to emphasize here is that this can help you structure your specific project for us. Let's for example, consider you do a neighborhood-focused art-making community class where you might ordinarily charge an expensive registration fee for your participants. The project for you for DCA consideration might be something like for the city to co-sponsor a scholarship for a handful of those participants so they can participate in your workshop for free. And then, of course, we'll culminate the public presentation. Emphasize the free or low-cost activities, and that should really stand out in your proposed project. The other consideration for us is geography. Our city, we're so lucky to live in such a diverse and wonderful, colorful city. And part of that is we have a very expanded map, and I'll switch over to a map here of our city so we can all kind of picture this. We call it the elephant ear. And so if you look at the map of the city of LA here, if you focus on that middle band of the city where Hollywood is, downtown Los Angeles is, those are areas that we find to be arts generously served. Lots of opportunities there. You can throw a rock and it'll ricochet out from several arts organizations. We also have arts moderately served spots, as well as arts underserved spots. And for us, this has been the San Fernando Valley. So everything above the 101 and 134 freeways, going as far as Sunland, Tujunga, Arleta, the North Hills, going into Chatsworth, Granada Hills, and to the far West Valley, Canoga Park, Woodland Hills. These are all areas where we would love to see more arts opportunities for the public. Similar situation with South Los Angeles. So if you can picture the geographic zone below the 10th freeway up until the 105 freeway, these are areas where we'd love to see more arts opportunities. So we have 15 council districts in our city, and these arts underserved areas correspond to 5 key ones. That's council districts 3, 6, 7, and 12 in the San Fernando Valley, and council districts 8 and 9 in South Los Angeles. I'll say that again. It's council districts 3, 6, 7, and 12 in the San Fernando Valley, and council districts 8 and 9 in South Los Angeles. So to the extent possible, as you're structuring your project proposal for us, emphasize services that you can organically, realistically deliver in those areas. A couple examples here. Let's pretend you're an arts education institution. You're very fortunate to serve schools across the entire region. And if you have schools in the Valley, you have schools in Hollywood, you have schools in Eagle Rock, you have schools in San Pedro, perhaps a way to structure a much more competitive project for us is to focus your proposal emphasizing the residencies that take place in these arts underserved areas for us. So that's one way of considering that. You might be a film festival that has multiple venues across the city. You take advantage of the theaters in Hollywood, but think about where you can package a project for us to specifically focus on the screenings that take place in South LA or in the Valley. Those are ways to strengthen your proposal by responding to our priority of incentivizing activities in our arts underserved areas.
Ben, I just wanted to say we have a few questions regarding the grant cycle before we move ahead to location. So Rafa, do you mind reading those questions?
Okay. So first from Martha Dempson, she has a quick question regarding if an organization is going to produce an art walk for a community for the first time, do we need to produce it and document it and then apply it in a subsequent cycle for funding?
That's absolutely correct. And that's the exact mindset to approach this with. Even though you cannot submit a proposal this time around for this brand new art walk, the beauty of these municipal funding opportunities are very cyclical in nature. And in fact, we've been very lucky to offer an application cycle every single year since I can't even count how many years back. So that's exactly the way to go about that. if this is a brand new idea, use this time now, between now and next August, to produce, deliver, and document the heck out of this brand new arts walk. So you'll have awesome metrics, you'll have an awesome story to share about what kind of community impact you were able to deliver, and awesome video and still photography from this initial event. You'll be in a very strong place next year to propose some of the proposal.
And then fringe benefits theater, as a theater organization, I'm wondering why it would be helpful to apply this year, even though we need to resubmit the application next year to be considered for a grant.
So I want to clarify. Let me go back to that slide, actually. Yes, it's a good question. I don't want our performing arts organizations to be dissuaded from submitting a proposal this year. The only thing I want to flag is that you would have that administrative burden to reapply next year. The reason you would want to submit an off-cycle proposal now is that way you can throw your hat in the ring for funding consideration the year that begins in July 2022. So here at the city, we are soliciting applications that are due by August 27th this month. We need the time between now and next spring to convene panelists, to carry out the administrative process, the evaluation process, and to await our budget allocation before we arrive at funding decisions for the year that begins July 1, 2022. That's our city fiscal year. So the reason you would want to apply now is that you're throwing your hat in the ring for funding consideration for next July. If you choose to wait till next year to submit your first proposal, the earliest you would receive funding consideration for us would be for the year that begins July in the year 2023. So that's the reason why you would do an off-cycle proposal now.
And then Kim Amador asked, would a 12-week after-school zines workshop in District 9 with a culminating event in the community be a fit under artistic category? Funding will allow us to expand to more schools.
So that's a great question. So we understand that the name of the project category is Sequential Arts in School Learning that culminates in a public event. We named it that, understanding that the vast majority of Sailcade projects will take place during in-school hours. We understand fully, though there are exceptions to this rule, that you can have rigorous, grade-appropriate, standards-aligned sequential learning that takes place after school hours, or maybe even in the summer intensive. So the question I'll throw back at you, Kim, is if you look at your project, is there a rigorous, grade standards-aligned, grade-appropriate curriculum associated with it? If that's the case, that might be a good fit for the Sailcade project. It's very important that the public culminating event takes place after school, in the evenings or on the weekends, when Raphael, Brenda, and I can drive down and check out the work too. Okay.
That's it for now.
Okay, great. So let's continue with the next program priority here of projects with capacity enrollment. We want you to select the project that you've had experience delivering, where you can showcase and boast about, we sold out all our seats, we sold all our tickets, capacity enrollment. We need the new venue because of the community demand for our project. We want to, as a municipal funder, we want to invest our limited resources towards projects with a proven track record of high community relevance, of events that your community wants to go to. So as you package your project for us, if you have a variety of options to pick from, zero in on the ones that you can really showcase and tell a story about. This is programming that is important to my community, and here are the numbers to prove it with our capacity enrollment and super high attendance. And of course, the last item here is that we are interested in projects that help develop, create, and sustain jobs for our artists and for other creative workers. So as you're putting together a project budget and you're going through all those budget lines and you're realizing, oh, how come I'm not paying any of my artists or my creative workers? That might be a good fit for us. So think about the type of project you're putting together and making sure you're putting together a financial component that emphasizes this priority for DCA. Okay, and Brenda will go over some ways where you can really make that crystal clear for the peer panelists as you're in your budget portion of the proposal, how you could identify the areas where you're targeting DCA support. All right, I now like to take a moment to talk about culturaldata.org, home of SMU Data Arts. Many of the arts organizations here are probably familiar with this. This can be quite a burden to do every year. There is a cultural data survey that SMU Data Arts asks you to do every year. And it's a super useful tool for us as a funder because it allows us to take a myriad information, metrics, workforce numbers, programming, financial, administrative information about your organizations, about a variety of organizations. Allows us to download that information in a consistent format that we can present to our peer panels. It allows for very easy apples-to-apples comparison, but well, where we can make that happen. This can be a time-consuming process, as you might know. So if you haven't started entering your data art survey for your most recently completed fiscal year, do start that now. We ask for at least 2 years of data arts profile information in your data arts funder report. If you have fewer than 2 years, there's a couple of examples where that can happen. If you're a brand new organization with only 1 year programming, you'll only have 1 year data arts. If you are a non-arts 501 organization, it could be a chamber of commerce or a business improvement district who's producing a festival or parade, you're not required to do data arts. In those instances, you can apply as an emerging arts organization if you're brand new, or if you're a festival, you can instead of a data arts profile report, submit to us your recently filed IRS 990 form and or a set of financial statements signed by your treasurer. All this is important because among the various other complex data, including your report, is your total revenue less in kind. That's a critical number for us because that allows us to understand your cash revenue for your recent years, which then you can turn into helping you calculate your maximum allowable grant request. So yes, brace yourself, there's a lot of text on this next screen, but we just intentionally kept this very text heavy because there's lots of details and permutations on how much you can ask of us based on the number of considerations.
And we have a couple of questions about the data arts form and people's fiscal year end and what their most recent year would be.
Great. We understand that everyone's fiscal year could be different. Our expectation is if your fiscal year ended within the last 6 months, let's say let's pretend your fiscal year ended December of the year 2020, is that you'll be able to provide to us a data arts report showing your fiscal 20 as your most recent year. If your fiscal year just ended in June, like the city of LA's, and so your fiscal 21 just ended, we don't expect to see your fiscal 21 necessarily. If you can do it, that's awesome. But the minimum we'll ask of you is that your fiscal 20 be included. Anything older than that can result in negative in point deductions in our staff audit and peer panel process. It's important to us that our panelists are seeing organizations' most current numbers about their organizational health, programming capacity, and so forth.
A couple more questions, Ben. Do you want to read them, Rafa, or do you want me to? Okay, great.
Another question is from Nora, asking, with this past year and the COVID pandemic, our financial information will be way out of the norm. How will this be evaluated?
It's a great question, Nora, and I'm sure a lot of other folks might be thinking about that. We want your cultural data survey to reflect the reality, and our staff, our team knows this. Our peer panelists know the reality and wackiness that COVID has presented with our arts organizations in particular, their ability to fundraise, deliver programs. And so certainly have your numbers reflect the reality. And when calculating your maximum allowable request, we are relying on that number, total revenues less than kind. What you can do, however, is take advantage of an opportunity in our application process where you can discuss significant variances from year to year. And COVID will be a popular theme. We fully expect to see that in our proposals this year. So that you can leave the panel understanding much more context and how your organization plans to recoup even stronger in these coming months. We are asking that you observe the total revenue less than kind number when using from your most recently provided data arts report when calculating your maximum allowable.
That's not to say if you made more money in 2019, you're going to use that as your last year of reporting, because if we see your fiscal year has ended and you haven't submitted your most recent report, your 990 may be available online, and we could use that number to adjust your grant request.
So allow me to go over real quickly these the details on this page. And so once you've done your homework and you did your data arts report, you'll arrive at your most recently completed fiscal year's cash revenue. Once you have that figure in your head, now you can start determining where in our budget size category you fit. One of the joys of being a municipal funding review support organization, small and large, from our small emerging arts organizations to our super extra large folks who have organization budgets far greater than our own. So here they are. Our large budget organizations are nonprofits with operating cash revenues of greater than $800,000 on consistently larger 800K. Our extra large budget organizations are those with $10 million or greater. Such organizations can request up to 4% of this number, up to a maximum of 80K, with requests accounting for no more than 50% of the total project budget. By the way, this reminds me that that's an important last part there, that all your grant requests in all cases, it can never be more than 50% of your total project budget. And the reason for that is that these grants do require a one-to-one non-city match. Any dollars that you are awarded, you would be expected to match one-to-one with non-city sources, which can come from a mix of cash equivalent sources and donated in-kind services and materials. One of our goals this coming year is to lighten the impact of that matching requirement by asking that our grantees generate their match with at least 30% cash sources. The remainder can be donated in-kind materials and services. Okay. Moving on, mid-sized organizations. These are folks in the 75K range. You can request up to 10% of your last completed fiscal year, up to 40K. Small organizations. These are folks in the $10,000 to $100,000 range. You can request up to 20K, accounting for no more than 10%. Oh, sorry, $10,000. Again, no more than 50% of your total project budget. Now, our very small emerging folks, these are small organizations with operating budgets of less than $20,000 in your most recent fiscal year, completed fiscal year. Or organizations who are newly incorporated with fewer than 2 years in the data arts. So these are very small grants. These are $1,500 to $3,000 grants for an artistic project. Our goal is to, with our emerging arts organizations, to support a small group of folks that we can start in the municipal funding process, with the hopes that you'll graduate and apply in a larger category once your finances are in that place. The only project-specific consideration that affects your allowable requests are our festival and parades category. So if you recall earlier, there's three kinds. There are small, and our large, and our online virtual. So we calculate your maximum allowable for this by looking at up to 30% of your most recently reported cash revenues, not exceeding $15,000 for small festivals, $30,000 for large festivals, and $20,000 for those online virtual festivals where you're able to garner 4,000 viewers, at least half of which are based in LA. So yes, lots of text here, lots of considerations, but the good news this year is we're rolling out this new tool that will help you calculate your maximum allowable requests. So to access that, go to our Cultural Grants Program Guidelines at dcaredesign.org/grants. You should have probably already seen that. That's how you registered for this webinar. But on this page, I'd like to highlight how you can access our new tool by clicking on Preparation, Matching Requirement, and Calculating Max Request, and going straight to our Allowable Grant Request Calculator. This presumes that you've done your homework already, you've done your data arts homework, and you have at least done a draft budget for your proposed project. Once you have those two bits of information, you can move forward with this tool and help you calculate what you can ask a DCA. So let's pretend you did your data arts and you have, let's say, $95,000 in cash revenues in your most recent fiscal year, completed fiscal year. So you are going for the mid-size category. You notice there's a small overlap between small and big. That's intentional. We want you as the applicant to decide which group against which you want to, and which pool you want to compete in. Those are considerations our peer panel takes into account. So your mid-sized organizations, you did your homework. You had total revenue less in kind of $95,000. You sketched a project budget for your Sail Cape project. Let's pretend you are doing a visual arts residency at a South LA middle school. You're doing a Sail Cape project, and you figured out that you sketched that project. You're focusing on 1 or 2 schools. It was let's say it was a $35,000 project. Click on the calculate max allowable. It'll tell you your maximum allowable request is $9,500, and with a brief explanation of why we calculated that. Okay, so we hope this tool is useful. I know this that slide we were just looking at is a lot for a grant writer to consider and work with. So we created this tool to help ease some of that pain once you've done some of that initial homework. Okay. So take advantage of that tool. I encourage you to visit that. Also on this main page is all the other details for this grant program. Importantly, also how to apply. To get to the application, click on the apply button, and it will take you to the link that will get you to SurveyMonkey Apply, which Brenda will talk about in a moment. So let me shift back to our presentation. Just re-emphasize this URL. Do visit it. All the information is there. Now let me walk us through the timeline for this cycle. We're in step 1 right now. You're registering for SurveyMonkey Apply. You're creating an account if you haven't created one already. You're starting to get acquainted with the online platform. You're going to submit your proposal to us August 27th online. It's a hard deadline. Please don't miss that. Submit it before by 11:59 p.m. on August 27th. And yes, we are still asking for a hard copy of what you're submitting. There will be instructions that will be emailed to you after you submit your online application. We ask for a post. We ask that you get that to us via U.S. mail. The DCA grants office is still not quite fully operational, but U.S. mail is super dependable there. So make sure to submit to us your hard copy of proposal by September 3, postmarked rather. Oops. And then you won't hear from us until May or June 2022. We need that time in between. As I mentioned earlier, we're convening peer panelists, and we're reading proposals, and we're asking them to review and score your proposals. May and June is when you would hear notifications from us on status. And then those who are awarded grants will begin services starting in July. All right, so this is another great spot to pause for questions before we move on to the next stage and ask Brenda to move us into the online application. So any questions?
There's a couple in the chat, Ben.
Okay.
So from Emily, this question, we haven't filed taxes for 2020 yet. Does that make 2019 our most recently completed year? It was a data arts question.
So
Go ahead, Ben.
So assuming assuming you are eligible, assuming you are exempt from our data arts requirement, that is, you are a brand new organization with only 1 year of programming, less than 2 years of data to including data arts, or you are a non-arts focused nonprofit working on a proposal for a festival or parade, you will submit to us your most recently filed 990 to determine your cash revenue from the most recent year.
This is from Martha. Are nonprofit business improvement districts with art committees eligible to apply as chambers of commerce would be?
Nonprofit business improvement districts who have an IRS designation as a 501 nonprofit, probably a 501c6 in that case, are eligible to apply if you are the lead producer for a festival or parade project. And again, yeah, you can apply in that category only, and there's an expectation that you'll be partnering with arts organizations, artists, or other arts experts to help curate an arts and cultural event.
This question is from Fatima. Multidisciplinary arts programs in underserved schools are taking place via Zoom. However, due to the pandemic, schools will not allow exhibitions after school. Is that acceptable?
So that's a great question, Fatima, and it reminds me. After all, what we're asking you to do is submit a proposal now for activities to take place starting no earlier than July 2022, going into June 2023. This is several months in the future. We are asking everyone to think super optimistically. We have our fingers crossed that our world will be in a place where we can safely gather and experience the arts in the way that we're accustomed to. And part of that is, if you're proposing multi-week residencies at schools, we invite you to prepare a proposal with the expectation that the arts learning can take place in person, and then the culminating presentations can take place after school, in the evening, and the weekends, in person as well. That being said, you can certainly prepare a proposal where you can make mention of your contingency plans, assuming that COVID restrictions are in place where Zoom learning is still the norm, or when after school in-person activities are difficult to do. And so I would advise in this case is that you plan in the optimistic range in mode where in-person learning and presentations can take place, where COVID is a minimal disruption, but also present contingency plans. So if this is a multidisciplinary residency, tell us in your proposal, should that not be able to take place in person, how you would still achieve that requirement of an after-school presentation open to the general public. Is it a recorded event? Is it an exhibition that's on YouTube? Is it on? Is it going to be a visual presentation on your website? There needs to be a public presentation of some sort. So it's incumbent upon you as the applicant to tell us how you would do that in the ideal scenario, as well as should restrictions be in place that makes that difficult.
And then Fringe Benefits Theater asks, what would be a good time to ask about how to get the BABIN number and business tax registration certification number? We've had a really hard time getting that in the past. Okay,
so BABIN numbers and BTRCs, initialisms and acronyms that we are throwing at you and as asked of you in the application are at the moment optional. Those are requirements for DCA grant contracting, but for the purpose of submitting a proposal, not necessarily needed. If you have it, it is helpful for us though. So to answer your question, it's not a requirement if you're brand new to us to have that now. But should you be awarded a grant, a good time to talk to us about that would be during contract.
That's all the questions we have for now.
Great. So I'm going to pass the baton on to Brenda. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and ask Brenda walk us through SurveyMonkey Apply and the online application.
Thanks, Ben. Thanks for that wonderful presentation. I'm going to share my screen now, and I'm going to start to walk us through their proposal. Can everybody see my screen?
You can see it, Brenda. Yeah.
Okay. So you're all familiar with this DCAredesign.org page, grants. Prepare and submit proposal is found under the Applying tab. You're going to click into your account or create an account if you haven't already. You're going to log in, and I'm going to go to my organization, because while I am registered in here, this is an organizational grant, the Cultural Grant Program. I'm going to continue with my application here, and I'm going to look at my application. This is going to give me all the elements I need for my application. I'm going to make my screen, it is a little smaller so everybody can see. I have 8 elements, some of which I've completed, but if it's a half circle, that means it is not complete. If there's a check mark, it is complete. If I wanted to add team members to help me with this grant proposal, I can do so from this page. I can also review and submit from this page as well.
Brenda, pardon the interruption. Would you mind hiding that sharing?
Sorry.
Thank you.
I'm going to go into the application, and we're just going to walk through it page by page. Please feel free to put your questions in the chat. If you'd like to speak your question, you can also just put that in the chat, and I'll be happy to entertain things as we go through this application. And Rafa can help us see the questions as we go through. So I'm going going to go back because it's put me at the last page. Okay. Sorry, folks. We're going to discuss each page from the beginning. I'm left-handed, so some things are backwards for me. Sorry about that. All right, so you're going to get to page 1. This is your cover page with basic information. Page 2 is going to be your narrative and key list of staff and artists. Page 3, project income, project expenses. You can also print out a PDF of this application from the previous page that had the instructions on it. There is a PDF printout if you want to see in advance what you're going to be asked and to work on your narrative answers. There is a character limit for the narrative answers. So let's go through this from the beginning. So this is my project, my IRS official name, all in caps. This is my popular name, street address, city, zip code, mailing address, very important for DCA. This is where your checks and your contracts get mailed. Right now, we're doing a lot of things digitally. We do offer direct deposit, but these mailing addresses are very important for us. Contact person, information, if you have Dun & Bradstreet, if you have your BABN, and if you have your city business tax registration certificate. I'd recommend if you plan on continuing to apply or plan on doing business with the city in other ways, that you go ahead and try to get these documents after you've submitted your application, because the process right now during remote times can be rather lengthy. So then I'm going to go to my budget size category. Now remember, Ben went over some of this with our budget sizes. In that slide, if you remember, there is some crossover, but also remember what you're asking for and your total budget of your project. And the value of your organization's cash revenue from your most recent cash revenue from most recently completed fiscal year is going to be from your data arts report. We check to make sure that this matches. And so please be mindful of that. So there is also a link to the special super duper grant calculator request that Ben has created for us right here. So you can also do that before you check your budget size and requested amount. I have said I'm going to be a mid-sized, and that's allowing me to ask for 10% of my annual revenue. And I've done that because my project budget size dictates I should be mid-size and only ask for 10%. My project size, excuse me. So now I go to discipline. Any of these disciplines can apply this year. The on-cycle disciplines are marked with an asterisk. I would just like to remind folks, sometimes our media people apply in the festival category. Please do not. That is your own category for your film festival, is in the media arts category. If you have any questions about these categories, we are happy to answer them for you through a quick email request. Okay, I'm requesting $10,000. My annual revenue, total cash revenue, less in kind, is $100,000. Now with $100,000, I could have been a small organization and requested 20%. So I could request $20,000. However, my total project is only $20,000. And I can't ask for more than 50% of my project. So I'm asking for $10,000, half of my project budget. And yes, I have completed the data funder report. Those are looked at very closely. Please be mindful of that information and get it as current as humanly possible. All right, so the Civic funding request. These are very specific categories. Again, if you have questions, please let us know and we'll be happy to answer them for you.
We have one question right now if you want to.
Okay, sure.
Pause here. So, from First Benefits Theater, is it okay to use the and sign, the ampersands, and other non-formal abbreviations in order to keep within the character limit?
Yes.
And then also, what if for the B section on this page, I believe your budget would fit in small for last year? a mid-size for the upcoming year, which should we check in B?
You're going to look at your total revenue less in kind, and that number plus your project budget are going to illustrate for you which category you should apply in. As I said, I could qualify for both small and mid-size with a $100,000 budget, but my project is only $20,000. So I can only ask for 10, and that means I can only ask for 10%. So I am mid-size. I'm not small.
Great. And then is the data funder report the same as the SMU data arts?
Correct.
Right.
Sorry for my lingo there with shortcut. So it's the data arts funder report. Yes, I've completed that. Here's my total revenue less in kind from that line number in the funder report. My civic funding, I'm going to do a small outdoor festival. That means I've already done this event and I have served between 1,000 and 2,000 attendees. Okay, here is the impact. I'm going to impact jobs and I'm going to impact free and low-cost social activities. Council district, very important, almost as important or even more important than your data arts report. There's a handy neighborhood info tool you can use to check the street address. It's going to populate your local, county, federal representatives. From there, you're going to make sure your council district matches where your project is going to take place. I'm sorry, this is where I'm headquartered. I skipped ahead. I am headquartered in my council district too. So you can again use your neighborhood info map for that. So now is where the project's going to take place. It's going to take place where I'm headquartered. I'm going to do it in Council District 2. I'm positive. I know I'm in Council District 2. This is the important part I was talking about. So if your project has 5 or more, we want you to select the ones that you're requesting DCA funding for. If you're doing things in 6 council districts, we want you to only list the council districts for which you would like to use DCA funding. Please let us know if you have any questions about that. And council districts are very difficult to change if you're awarded a contract. Our council members are counting on those arts and cultural services in their council districts, and it's nearly impossible to change after the fact. If you're doing an online project, if you know for sure you're not going to be able to go in person and you're planning on going online next year, you can select all. There will be some additional paperwork required showing us how you intend to navigate the project online and how you're going to collect the metrics from your online distribution. Okay, I've said no, I'm not going to be online. Okay. Next, we have start and end dates. I'm doing a festival on one day. Now, as a reminder, DCA does not typically have the funds to help you produce a season of work. That's why we ask for only 6 months maximum. It's a cycle that works for both our administrative ability and our funding possibilities. So each year we're asked for $12 million of grant funding and we have 3.4 to give out. That's why we encourage you to ask for your maximum request, because most likely we would not be able to fund you at 100%. Again, that's why we also consider these reimbursable and matching grants. I'll get to that in a minute. Please be sure to put your dates, your start and end dates, no more than 6 months apart. Please don't put the full contracting period of July 1st to June 30. We need to know specifically when your project will take place. If you don't know, give your best guess. So this is your public impact of your proposed services. I know I need 25 staff and artists working on this project, and I'm estimating I'm going to get 2,500 people to attend this year in my audience. And this is a special constituencies that I'm going to target. I'm going to target my seniors. I know they love my event, adults, You can choose these as you see fit that are accordingly appropriate for your project. You can back it up in your narrative. Okay? Going on to the next page. Okay, here we're going to start some of your narrative. So please be mindful. We don't want marketing materials. We don't want flowery language. We want your honest and well-written explanation of your project, how you're going to do it, how it will be executed, how it's been done before, and how your organization works. The questions with the starburst are questions you may already have some answers to. These are questions that many municipal funders, including places like Culver City, Santa Monica, the county, LA Arts and Culture Department have agreed to be the same. So these questions, once you've worked on them and answered them, you can repeat in your other grants to those different municipal agencies. So here we have your mission, and we want this as specific as possible. We don't want you to write something new. It should already be on your website or a board approved statement. It is what the essence of your organization does. We need to know your history. You've done this for 20 years, or you've done this for 2 years. You've expanded program through this neighborhood. Please be very specific there. Planning and leadership. We're asking you for a little bit of forecasting and a little bit of what's established, right? So we want to know administratively, artistically, financially, what you're doing in the next 2 years, some short-term goals, steps that you've taken toward that, board and staff, how they contribute to the overall planning. 3,000 character limit, highly recommend working on all these narratives on Word document and then place them in the final document into the narrative here. All right, core community audience. So this is specific for geography, age, cultural, economic, as applicable, right? Describe how your organization interacts with this audience, including any advisory councils, and how your programs meet the needs of that audience. This is your artistic policy, not necessarily as limited as your mission, but this is how your organization makes decisions, your flow chart, your practice calendar, how you pay your artists, when you pay your artists, etc. And now we're at the project narrative. This is what you're asking us to fund. These are the services you wish to provide to the City of Los Angeles for this grant award. We want you to describe the operational or artistic project for which you're seeking support. Those details are going to include where, when, how it advances your mission, and why this project would support the DCA mission and grant objectives. It's a 3,000 character limit. Please be mindful of that. And then G, since we're not a seed funder and we're not a startup funder, we want to know, how did it turn out last time? You're going to make note of all of these questions here. You're going to justify your cost per head. You're going to talk about your target groups and how you may need to adjust based on your metrics, participant audience metrics. Brief but numerical data is very important here. And then part 4 here, you're going to get to staff and artists with your project. So we want short biographies, and these are necessary and very important. They're going to show us the artistic quality of your participants. They're going to show us your ability to engage these artists in your project. And you may include many, many artists here. So I've included my core 5 here, and I'm not going to add more, but I could. So the more you can flesh out your project and tell us who is going to be engaged, the better. Just a reminder, DCA does not fund open calls. We don't fund open mics. Anything where we don't know the participants is not a strong application.
Some questions here, Brenda, before we move on.
Sure.
On this section of the application, on question E, how would you define social activities?
Artistic policy?
This is question E. How would you define social?
It was up higher. There was a multi-part question that had 4 different options to click off. I think it's an earlier E. I'm sorry if I'm confusing this. Community dialogue, lifelong learning, cultural arts, jobs, free and low cost social activities.
Yes, so that's your project.
Yes.
Is it providing a free and low cost social activity for the participants?
What I'm asking though is how do you define social activities? Because we conceive of them as artistic activities, but
I would say that's interchangeable for that question.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
And then Emily asked, we are asked to provide prior year artists, payments, and partners. Everything about last year is skewed. Our festival was hybrid in 2020. Part online and part on demand and streamed, and small part in person. Can I use 2019 info?
I would answer that question with saying, we want your hybrid people. We want what you did last year. We all know everybody had a challenge. We all know a lot of events went online if they were able to happen at all. So please provide the most recent year activity. And we'll get to that when we go over the supplemental materials. I'll go over that more in depth in just a minute.
I'll add a quick note to that. I think Emily just asked the question as well. We do draw that connection between what you're proposing to take place in 2022, 2023. If you are envisioning a fully just live experience without a hybrid component, in the narrative response, it asks for prior metrics, emphasize the last time it took place successfully in person. But certainly feel free to mention your ability to pivot and make an adjustment if needed, if COVID is such that that type of production cannot take place that way. But draw the line between what you're proposing and the metrics that you're reporting. So for many folks who did festivals back in 2019, they were in person. And for folks submitting the proposal now, they're pitching a project to take place in person as well. So highlight those metrics as well for us.
Another question was, should the project date include planning and finishing up or just the days of the event?
Well, we'll go over the budget right now. Planning can be in your budget. Finishing up, yes. I mean, you're going to have to submit a final report. It's going to be the entire budget. So
I believe the question is respect to the start and end dates of the proposed project. And as demonstrated in Brenda's sample here, we're interested in the public-facing activities. So if you're planning your new exhibition around a specific artist, we understand there's lots of back-end work that's involved. But for the purpose of the proposal, to emphasize the services dates when the exhibition opens, public programming takes place, and when all of that happens. That's what you should include in your start and end date.
Yes. So this grant proposal starts with your proposal income. There's a hyperlink to the instructions on this that can further detail out and help you define each of these categories. So this is for your proposed project, not for your organization budget. This shouldn't total the total revenue less in-kind number that you submitted on your page 1. This should total your project budget. My project budget is $10,000, right? So here we have, several different categories for revenue, for income to my event. If I'm selling subscriptions, performances, any rental income, for program use, other earned income, and then we get to contributed income. So there's another breakdown here. Any and all budget notes are greatly appreciated. The panel really gets a better idea of your revenue and expenses once you delineate how they apply to the festival, how they're important. Anything where there's double, we ask you to delineate them. So here there's more than one foundation, so that's been broken out. So then we go into our expenses. So salaries and fringe, right? This is not, our artists are paid by 1099. There's nothing in here. They're not salaried. Our development director, our executive director, we're putting half their salary toward this event. And then my fringe, I'm going to have to pay taxes, right? My accounting expenses, any other PDA, PR. So this is my DCA funding priority, and I've let the panel know it by putting it in there. I'm going to pay my artists and performers with this money, right? So any hospitality, conference, some other items in here are not eligible once funded for reimbursement. That's what we're hoping your matching funding will cover. So also be mindful of that. You're not tied to this budget, but this is a breakdown for the panel to see how this project is going to be put forth. Okay, so honoraria, office expenses, you know, any way you can break down with notes is very useful. And then I come to my cost per head, right? I'm at $11.36. That's pretty good. It's a festival. There's some engagement. It's more engagement than if I was doing a mural and I counted people going by. It's not as much as if I was doing a 12-week intensive workshop with kids in a culminating event. For that, I might have a higher cost per head. You can justify your cost per head by the engagement. Okay, now we're going to get to the end of this part. We've reached the end of the grant proposal. I'm going to mark this as complete. And then I'm going to go, it'll give me a printout here. Very important, keep a copy of your work. I'm going to now go to my materials that I need to upload. Okay, this has got a green check mark now. I'm done. Now I'm going to go to my Data Arts Funder report. So I'm going to show you how to upload your Data Arts Funder report. You're going to log in to your Data Arts. You're going to go to culturedata.org. You're going to log in. Here's your login page. And then you're going to get to this page. You're going to see your surveys, and you're going to go to funder reports and grants. You're going to type in cultural affairs. You're going to find us. And here we are. And then you're going to click in and view it. You want to view the report. You're going to review the submission. And then you're going to download. You're going to, first of all, make sure that our DCA logo is on there. That way you know it's the correct funder report. Then you're going to download a PDF. And that PDF will be uploaded right here. Upload Data Art Funder Report. We also,
And then might be a good point to pause. We had some questions come in.
okay.
So, Fringe Benefits asked if even though we'd write mid-size for this year under, this is for the budget size section, could we still calculate our largest possible request using small? For example, our total revenues for last year were just over 75,000, but our project budget for 2022/2023 is just over 100,000. We're paying our artists and teaching artists more this coming year, plus we're expanding our project outreach.
So are you asking if you can submit a $100,000 project? You can unmute yourself and go ahead and ask.
I'm sorry, I thought I had unmuted. I'm asking, it seems like I'd be listing it two different ways. Mid-size for question B, but then to calculate the amount, it's based on last year's budget, and I'd like to go as small theater.
Okay, so if you're small, you can ask for 20% if your project budget matches. So let's say you were at $100,000, your small would allow you to ask for $20,000. That means your project budget would be $40,000.
The whole project budget is 100,000. So the maximum I think I could ask for is still just 20,000.
Correct. There is a cap in each budget category for the ask.
But it's okay to list it one place as mid-size organization and another place as small.
I wouldn't recommend that. Where would you list it as small if you did mid-size to begin with?
Mid-size would apply for the coming year, small to the past year.
Well, you're not asking for funding for the past year. You're asking for funding for based on your past year.
Based on the past year, yeah.
When
Maybe I should take this offline. Pardon?
When does your fiscal year end?
June 30th.
Okay, and so that makes you mid-size?
For the coming year. Maybe I should ask this offline
So
because
if that's
not
your
relevant.
most recently completed fiscal year, that's what you would request based on it.
Yeah, I like the idea of taking this as a separate conversation if we're getting into individualized questions, but in the effort to generalize the question, your request is all based on the most completed fiscal year information you're submitting as part of your data arts. Remember, one of the things our peer panelists look for is for an organization's likely ability to deliver on the proposed project. So if this is a situation where you're basing your grant request on a reduced, far lower organizational budget, but proposing a project of far greater size, even possibly exceeding your most recently reported project budget, that will raise flags. Not to say it can't be successfully done, but there's a lot more explaining and discussion to be done in the narrative. Okay, but yes, if you have additional questions, let's set up a different call.
Yeah, because matching funding should equal your total budget. So if you could only ask for 20, you would have to show $80,000 in matching funding. We require at least a 50% match. So in your case, to meet the whole budget, you would need an 80% match.
Gotcha.
So please email us so we can discuss it further.
Rapo, what's the next question up on the queue?
In the artistic staff section, in addition to individuals, can we add groups, for example, a student service org that donates their teaching assistance support?
We need specific bios. So an organization bio you can mention in the narrative, but I would not recommend, you could list each person from that organization that volunteers their work, but I would not list an organization because again, it's like an open call. We don't know who it is. So we need specific bios for people and not organizations.
Thank you.
Martha asked, could the budget for an artistic proposal ask for support for two things? One, artist salaries. Two, support for a large block of free/ultra low cost tickets for a specific economically challenged constituency?
We are a project funder. So while you may propose an A and a B in your project narrative, I would concentrate on the free and low cost tickets to make these events available to that constituency and strengthen the narrative by showing your relationship to that constituency. We do not fund salaries, operating budgets, or things like that. That's more of a county grant. We are a project funder, and that's why we do a 6-month window. So for salaries, that's an annual thing, and that's not really, that may be part of an artistic budget for an artistic project, but it would not be the priority of funding.
If one way of pitching this, if I'm understanding this correctly, if ordinarily admission access costs more than what you pay for a ticket, a way to frame your narrative is suggesting a city investment would make it possible to allow a certain portion to arrive and participate in your program at free and low cost. On the budget side, that should be reflected as a total of your, you're delineating the expenses of making that project happen. And you can indicate where you're targeting your requested DCA funding.
Yeah.
If you're directing it toward artist fees, that's perfect. I think one element here is that you're describing in your narrative what the city investment can make possible, how it makes your project bigger, faster, stronger. And on your budget side, you're telling us specifically what expense lines you would target DCA funding. And as we mentioned earlier, we love to prioritize payment to artists, creative workers. Secondary to that, we like supporting the marketing and promotional efforts that ensure maximum capacity enrollment and participation. And third to that, efforts to evaluate and track and improve upon the process, program evaluation expenses. Those I would describe those as our top 3 areas where you should direct your DCA request toward in your expense and income budget.
Yes, thanks, Ben. And I would also mention that arts administrators are necessary to get these projects going, so please include them in your budget. But as a sole funding request, as Ben said, please keep in mind our priorities. Okay, so after you've uploaded your data art funder report, you're going to upload financial snapshot and variances if you want to. This will flesh out your application. It will give the panel a much more clear picture of your organization. You're free to add notes to this, anything that will help your organization put forth the strongest application. Next, you're going to upload your IRS determination letter. So this is the letter you get from the federal government declaring your organization nonprofit 501c3 or C6 exempt. We need this, the city's going to need it to prove nonprofit status, to also help us ascertain the LA County base of your organization. Next, we need you to upload a list of your board of directors. And we've given you a handy dandy, board of directors template to fill out. So we want you to put the board title, the name, works, affiliation, years served. Please know that 3 is the minimum the state requires. We like to see robust boards. We like to see boards that are varied and diverse. And it really does give a great picture of your organization. Next, you're going to upload your artistic work samples. You're going to have the choice between links or images. Highly recommend links if your project is moving at all. The panelists like video. They like to see your work in action. Or if you're a visually focused project, please submit your images, because that would be your best foot forward in this application. You have a choice to submit 3 links or 10 images. For your links, I highly recommend they not be marketing material, that they be related to the work, that they actually be a video of the work from the previous year. We want this application to tie together. So the more you can show the work you intend to do with the grant funding, the better. So the artistic documentation should reflect the work you're requesting funding for. All right, I've said I'm going to select 2 links here, and so I've put them in there. Next.
If you allow me, I'll add a couple of quick notes to that. Artistic documentation, as Brenda's noted, super important in compelling the peer panel. Even if you have a lot of images you'd like to share, where possible, include a video link. If the 3 links is a great way to show links to a website, a PowerPoint presentation, a live recording of your project in action. A couple of things that tends to really impress our panelists is experiencing the event in person and having an understanding of the size and scope of the audience and their extent of engagement. So if your samples can show not just the wonderful artistry that's taking place on the stage or on the gallery wall, but the public's reaction and extended participation, even better. If you have a skill building focused workshop, video that documents what the experience of working with your teaching artist is like is also very well received. Something that really highlights the skills of a teaching artist and how they work and work with their audience and workshop participants is good too.
Yes, and I would say, Ben, that for organizations that have robust artistic documentation, they can put some of the things you've mentioned in their supplementary.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to be mindful of our time. So are there any more questions in the queue right now?
Yes, there's a couple.
Okay.
Would we be allowed to upload 2 links and 1 PDF with images?
I'm afraid not. We can't
No,
switch.
if you allow me, you have the choice, as Brenda noted, to provide 3 links or 10 static images. If you go the links route, if you somehow upload that PDF as a downloadable link, that can be certainly one of your links.
Yeah, that's
then
what
the
I was
2
going
additional
to
links
say.
can be
Yeah.
different.
So we can't do both links and images, but there is a way to save your PDF as a link, and I recommend doing that. Any more questions?
Any guidelines for a reasonable cost per head for festivals or for exhibitions?
You know, that's a very good question and sort of an ad hoc question. Of course, our priority is free and low cost. And for us, that's about the price of a movie ticket. So you want to keep it at that or less for those 2 engagement activities. So depending on your budget and your audience size, that could also affect your cost per head. So be mindful how all the calculations work together and try to arrive at what you feel is the most appropriate and accurate cost per head for your project. You know, if you're doing a project that's going to reach 500 people is very different from a festival that's going to reach 5,000 people. So it really depends on your audience and your budget and how they all tie together.
I'll add a couple of notes there. I've seen peer panelists get easily turned off with a very high cost per head, and I've seen peer panelists get convinced that it's worth it. There are projects that may include really hard to involve artists from their international space. It could be a really in-depth experience where you're working with the best teaching artists and practitioners in the field. If you're able to articulate and justify that in your proposal, you can perhaps sway a peer panelist to accept a $100 cost per head. But let's look at the opposite examples like Brenda suggested. If you are creating a temporary canvas mural that's along a chain link fence that thousands of motorists pass by over the course of a period, we expect that cost per head to be less than $1. And so it's incumbent upon you as a grant writer to draw the case. If it's an expensive cost per head, and let the panelists understand why. If it's a very thrifty one, explain that as well.
Yes, both sides of the financial spectrum, you know, thrifty, expensive, justify it.
Yeah. Across the portfolio, our cost per head across all the projects, it tends to hover around the $20 range. So when you start to present a cost per head that's much, much higher than that, there should be a very strong case for it in your proposal.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and finish up here. You've got the next category is new. What you're going to upload here are your supplementary materials. You'll see 3 of them are required and the other 2 are optional. So very quickly, I know we're out of time. Thank you for this. I'll try to finish by 5:35 and take final questions. You're going to attach your project location. This is a requirement, and please read this. You're going to upload a PDF of the sites of your proposed project, and you're going to outline name of the venue, the address, council district, and the name or title of your of your contact person at that venue and the number of years you've presented at this site. Okay, we're going to check this list against the 1 to 4 council districts you've indicated that would be served by your project. So please be specific. Please be mindful that this is required. As if you are a returning applicant, you may realize this is our new host venue form. This is showing us where the project will take place and your relationship to that space or place. Okay? Attachment B, this is the immediate prior year artists involved with the project that you're asking us to fund, that you're asking DCA to fund for bigger, better, faster, stronger. You're going to show the quality of the work through the artists and the people who participated and how it was completed. Okay? There's a very specific note in here. Artists who live in the city of LA should be named in bold, and artists who are salaried employees should be listed in italics. Okay? Next up, you have attachment C. That's going to be your recent press material. This is going to be covering a similar project or the very same project you're asking for funding. And this should be outside voices, right? This should not be your board member telling us how great the organization is. This should be unsolicited. This should be testimonials. This may be something where you could upload your teacher surveys or things to show us the quality of your work. Okay? Attachment D is required for SailCape, but not required for any other projects, right? So you need a curriculum and lesson plan if you are planning on doing an arts education project in school. Or if you are doing an intensive arts education project, say if it's a summer intensive or it has a learning, consecutive learning, building public, building into an after workshop public culmination. Sorry, Ben, go ahead.
I'll add as well, even if you are proposing a non-SailCape project that involves any kind of skill building, art making, a sample lesson is a super useful resource that you can share with the panel to understand what kind of learning will take place. So required for SailCape, absolutely a curriculum. Any kind of skill building, even if it's art recreational, general community focus, art making, a sample lesson plan is a great idea.
Okay, yeah, while these are not required, they're highly encouraged, right? Attachment E here. If your organization has a non-arts marketing or presenting partner that are not the site of your event, you're going to upload a document that lists the name and addresses and years that you've worked with those partners. Those are partners with expertise. Earlier, someone wanted to know if they could put another organization that has instructors that volunteer. This is the place where you would upload your non-arts partners list. That's where you would put the nonprofit that offers their teaching artists to you. Attachment F, letter of recommendation. Letter of recommendation never hurt anyone. This would be a great way to get another outside voice or non-paid collaborating partner, individual or family served by your project, testimonials. That would be a great thing to add. All right, and I believe that aside from the estimated service metrics, which we greatly appreciate you filling out, this tells us the breakdown of your board of directors, your administrative and artistic, and your target audience. And then finally, we have the process evaluation form. You all love this process. We know it. No, I'm kidding. We try to make it easier every year. We try to streamline it. We understand it is a lot. This is municipal government funding and has to be very transparent. So we have to be very detailed in the application. Okay, any more questions?
Yes. This is from Adam. Can the downloadable sample of the questions that allow us to pre-write them be a Word doc instead of a PDF so we can just draft the answers within it?
If you have the ability to If you have Adobe, you can make it into a Word document. If you don't have Adobe, just email me and I'll do that for you.
Martha.
I'll respond as well to Adam's question or comment around the difficulty in obtaining reviews. It is important that if you do provide a review, it be fairly recent in the last couple of years. Any older than that can raise flags in the peer panel process. But absent reviews do tap into other outside voices who can help substantiate the quality of the program. This could be the artists that you've worked with, filmmakers that you've screened, attendees, families who've experienced your programs, and so that the peer panelists can understand what impact your program has had on them.
Yes, Adam, that language is very broad, so it's not just reviews. So go ahead and submit your strongest outside voices. Thank you all very much for staying over. Apologies that this went late. Really appreciate your attendance. Very grateful that you're interested in applying to the program this year. Feel free to email us, dca.grants@lacity.org. Any further questions or follow-up that we would like to discuss, that you'd like to discuss regarding your specific needs to your application. We want you to be successful and we're here to help you, and really appreciate you taking the time for this webinar.
Thank you everyone for your time.